Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 Namanda. We'll now chant Shi Xin Lai. Please join me in reciting the three treasures. 1. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be freed from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 Namanda. Now please join me in chanting Jusege. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandav, 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 Namandav. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you. I'd like to start the next part of our service, and we're going to sing the Gatha Lumbini's Garden, which will be led by the Cherry Blossoms. So, let me just share a music video.
Softly blew the breezes on that glorious morn in Lumbini's garden where the Buddha was born. From the earth sprang flowers, birds and warblers sang, while through earth and heaven strains of music rang. Softly blew the breezes on that glorious morn in Lumbini's garden where the Buddha was born. From the earth sprang flowers, birds and warblers sang, while through earth and heaven strains of music rang.
That was lovely. I love the cherry blossoms. Okay, I'd like to start our next part of the service, which will be my Dharma message, and I have a presentation to share with that. So I'd like to start with our Gosandai, which comes from the Jusege, which we chanted today. If you please join me in Gassho. 構想上満足異様老実法日月修十期天候温風源異種解放像公石独法上欧大集中説法四四空 Having attained Buddhahood untainted, my august air shall illumine the 10 quarters. The sun and moon being outshone, the celestial lights shall hide in shame. I will open the Dharma storehouse and bestow on all the treasures of my virtues. Constantly going among the masses, I will preach the Dharma with a lion's roar. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandav, 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 Namandav. As I said, the passage that we just read today for the Gosandai comes from the Jusege that we just chanted. The Jusege is translated as the three sacred vows, which is in the larger sutra of immeasurable life, where Bodhisattva Dharmakara declares to Buddha Lokeshvaraja the intention to become Amitabha or Amida Buddha. In the three vows, Dharmakara pledges to 1. Establish the most incomparable vow in existence. 2. To become a great provider and to save the poor and suffering. And to 3. Attain Buddhahood and have the name of Amida Buddha heard throughout the 10 quarters of the universe. Today, for my Dharma talk, I want to discuss this passage from Jusege in the context of accessibility, because this month, July, is Disability Pride Month, and I think that many of us in our Sangha have learned a bit more about the importance of accessibility since shifting from live in-person services to doing our live Zoom services. Having our services in a digital format is very different from what many of us have grown accustomed to. We changed things for safety reasons, to protect ourselves and our community. However, we've had the opportunity to share the Dharma and come together as a Sangha in new ways that we didn't do before. A lot of our Sangha who are disabled and or have other difficulties due to compromised immune systems or lack of access to transportation have been able to join us for in-person services, or were not able to join us for in-person services in the temple building. But since we offered online services, they've been able to come to our Zoom services to chant and sing and hear the Dharma together. Or if they can't make it to the live service, they can watch the YouTube recordings. This past year has been challenging for all of us in various ways, depending on our life circumstances. Some of us have gotten sick or have had loved ones get sick, and maybe we've experienced loss either due to COVID or the restrictions under which we've had to live. However, I know that there's always a lesson for us to learn in difficulty. And I think a really important one is in finding a way to make our community and our teachings more widely accessible. I'd like for us to think for a second about the events of this past year and how they forced many of us to live in the shoes of others. This means that what we would generally consider quote-unquote normal, like driving, walking, or taking the bus to Sunday service in the temple building, it's something that we've lost. And for a lot of us, it isn't because we're physically unable to do so. Rather, our public health policies prohibited it. And we also made social agreements as a temple to protect our public safety and the health, so that we didn't have our in-person services at the temple. However, if we consider the perspective of a disabled person, this could be someone who experiences difficulty due to mobility limitations, someone who has compromised immune systems, or maybe someone who experiences intense social anxiety from being around a lot of people. There are many reasons why disabled folks might not be able to come to an in-person Sunday service at our temple under what we would normally consider normal circumstances. Due to the way we've adapted to the pandemic, however, all of this makes our Sangha more accessible to other people and to more people. And I think that's exactly what we need to do as a Sangha. On the next 2 slides, I want to bring up 2 general perspectives on disability and how we can learn to be more person-centered and uplifting disabled folks in our Sangha. There will be 2 diagrams, and they express these different ways of looking at disability and help us to see and understand our inherent ableist biases. A more conventional understanding of disability is this one, which has been rejected by the disabled communities and their advocates, and it's called the medical model of disability, which often treats disabled individuals as a problem, that there is something defective with them. It treats disability as someone who's broken and in need of fixing. Just like with minorities in race, gender, and sexuality throughout history, disabled people have been pathologized. This is an entire outlook on life, and it's difficult to unlearn this idea that disabled people are a problem. However, another way of looking at disability, which is called the social model of disability, treats society's barriers as the problem. This model represents the diversity of difference in ability and seeks to create a world in which difference of ability isn't something for which we just accommodate, but it's an aspect of diversity that we can appreciate about one another and celebrate together. The social model of disability requires a lot of work in unlearning our own biases and pathologizing disabled folks. And it also requires us to uplift the voices of disabled people to know how we can make the world safer and more inclusive for them, and how they experience the world around them. In this very specific example of how we've shifted to live Zoom online services, I hope that we can see the value of our Sangha and our loving community, and how we need to envision ways of expanding what that community looks like, and how to make the boundaries of that community and the experience of our Sangha community, how it can look different for each of us. Going forward, I really hope that we can continue to hold live Zoom services and record them for those who can't come to the live services that we might hold at our temple when we move towards opening it. For me, finding this way of including and uplifting disabled folks in our Sangha and investigating the changes that we need to make is tied directly to Dharmakar's vow to outshine the sun and the moon, and to constantly go among the masses preaching the Dharma with a lion's roar. It's seeing the problems in our world that prevent folks from hearing the Dharma and making changes in the world and in our Sangha that allow the experience of encountering the Dharma to be more universal. Many of us have disabilities, and I think that these are some important questions around disability for us to ask ourselves and our communities of which we're a part. The first is, what accommodations have we had to make for ourselves? The second is, what accommodations have we had to make for others? The fourth is, what obstacles have we faced due to our society's barriers? And the last one is, how do we contribute to those barriers for other people? Speaking personally, I've had to wear glasses since I was in first grade. I was only 6 at the time. And my eyes drastically got worse every time I go see the optometrist. And I think by middle school, I couldn't see more than blurry shapes without my glasses. I've grown accustomed to them as part of my life, but there are times when I feel upset or sad about having to wear glasses. Just a few years ago, when I started graduate school at the Institute of Buddhist Studies, I learned that I needed special lenses with a prism in them to help correct my vision further, because of all the reading I was doing. My eyes can still focus on things up close with my regular glasses, but because of my prescription being so strong and the difference between the prescription from one eye to the other, the lenses were bending light a little bit differently, and this meant that I'd get headaches and feel dizzy after reading for a couple of hours. And in graduate school, I was spending at least 10 to 20 hours reading every week. I've had to make a lot of accommodations in my own life because of my own disability. Other disabled folks have to adapt to their disabilities too. Sometimes those adjustments are minor, and sometimes they're life-altering. The point of Disability Pride Month and advocating for disabled folks is not to have pity on disabled people. Rather, it's to uplift their voices and to understand what changes we can make as a society and what assumptions we have to unlearn in order to make the lives of disabled folks as enjoyable and as accessible as they are for able-bodied people. It isn't about treating disabled people differently necessarily, and it's certainly not about patronizing or coddling them, Rather, it's about changing ourselves and the world that we live in to ensure that folks with disabilities are heard and have the access to the same things that able-bodied people do. Just to tie this once again to our teachings, understanding disabilities and that difference, and the struggles that disabled folks face, and uplifting their voices, is a part of learning our interdependence as beings. This is the Dharma, and ensuring that everyone, especially disabled folks, have access to the Dharma and feel at home in our community, in our Sangha, all of that. It's part and parcel of Buddha's wish that all beings are able to transcend the world of suffering by learning the Dharma. I'd like to close my Dharma talk today by sharing the passage from Jusege once again. So please join me in Gassho. 고소조 만석 이요로지포 니치가츠 슈주키 텐코 옴푸겐 이슈 가이호조 고세쿠 dokuho 조오 다이슈추 seppo shishiku. Having attained Buddhahood untainted, my august heir shall illumine the 10 quarters. The sun and moon being outshone, the celestial lights shall hide in shame. I will open the Dharma storehouse and bestow upon all the treasures of my virtues. Constantly going among the masses, I will preach the Dharma with a lion's roar. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandab, 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 Namandab. Okay, I'd like to end the recorded portion of our service today by thanking all of you for attending our service, if you came to the live service, or for listening in on YouTube, if you watched the recording. I'd also like to thank the Cherry Blossoms, Miko, Emily, and Lisa for their beautiful performance of Lumbini's Garden. Thank you to the Buddhist Temple of Marin for all of your kindness and support. I wouldn't be here without you. We'll end the recording now. Please feel free to unmute yourself in just a moment and stick around to chat a little bit.